You did everything right. You worked hard. You followed the rules. You kept your promises. You stayed silent when it hurt. But now it's 5 a.m. The house is quiet. Too quiet. You sit at a small kitchen table, the wood worn smooth after decades of dinners and decisions. Your hand wraps around a chipped coffee mug. The steam rises slowly. Outside, the first grey light slips through the window and casts a pale shadow on the empty wall. The room feels heavier than it should. Heavy with the weight of everything you built and everything you lost. You look around. The walls don't answer back. The phone doesn't ring. The chair across from you is empty, and has been for a long time. You take a slow sip. The warmth feels good, but the question lingers, pressing itself into your mind more urgently than ever. You did everything right. So why does this still feel wrong? You provided. You performed. You sacrificed. You endured. You tried to live the story they told you. Work hard, and life will work out. Be dependable and you'll be respected. Keep the peace and you'll be loved. But sitting here now, you feel it. Something was missing all along. This morning is yours. No one is asking for your time. No one needs your attention. No one is questioning your silence. You don't have to explain why you're awake at this hour or why you're sitting alone. The silence is yours. The space is yours. But the journey that brought you here was costly. It wasn't luck or chance. It was clarity. Hard-earned clarity. The kind that only comes after years of giving more than you had to give, of shrinking yourself just to keep others comfortable. The chipped mug in your hand holds more than coffee. It holds history. Memories of mornings just like this but different. Mornings where you felt the need to rush, to answer, to prove. Not anymore. Today you sit still. Today you breathe. Today you finally claim what you couldn't before. Peace. And this peace? It came at a cost. A heavy cost. 18 lies you had to unlearn to finally live free. Lies that shaped your youth, your work, your relationships, your sense of self. Lies that made you chase success while ignoring stillness. Lies that made you perform instead of rest. Lies that made you ask permission to live your own life. Before we begin, if you've ever sat in your kitchen and felt that quiet freedom too, drop a comment below. I chose peace over performance. This story is yours. Let's talk about the lies you let go of, so that this morning could finally feel light. Lie 1. If you work hard and follow the rules, life will work out. He believed that for decades. Every morning, a crisp shirt carefully ironed, a tie straightened, shoes polished until they shone. He arrived on time, prepared, respectful. He avoided mistakes. He avoided trouble. He played by every rule that was handed to him. His performance reviews were perfect, his desk immaculate, his reputation reliable. He minimized disruption. He provided. He stayed steady. He stayed responsible. And now he sits in a room he worked so hard to pay for, a silent room, a clean, empty space. The certificates hang on the wall, the promotions logged in company records, the pension accruing in a distant account. But no one is here. No one applauds. No one thanks him for staying in line. And quietly, a truth rises. The system was never designed to reward him with meaning. It needed his predictability, not his happiness. It required compliance, not fulfillment. He remembers the map they gave him as a boy. Go to school, get a job, work hard, follow the rules, and happiness will follow. But that map never led him home. So now he sits in this space, not lonely but finally awake. The next step requires no permission. If he wants a life that feels real, he must stop asking for approval. He must stop performing and start living. Lie 2. Your identity is your career, your provider role. For decades when asked, "Who are you?" he answered with what he did. "I'm an engineer. I'm a manager. I'm a provider." His role wasn't just his responsibility. It became his reflection. It became the scaffolding that held up his self-worth. But scaffolding isn't meant to stay forever. One day the job ends. Retirement, layoff, divorce, the children leave, the balance shifts, and suddenly the question echoes again. If you are not providing, then who are you? But this isn't a crisis. It's an invitation to discover the man beneath the doing. A reminder, man's worth is not what he produces. It's what he preserves. His peace, his dignity, his choices. The man he is at his core, curious, experienced, observant, exists beyond any title. He isn't his salary, he isn't his position, he isn't his usefulness. And so the real question becomes, who was he before he learned to define himself by his work? That man still exists. Lie 3. Marriage is about sacrifice and compromise. He remembers the quiet dinners, sitting at the table, keeping his thoughts inside, not because he had nothing to say, but because keeping the peace seemed safer than speaking. He remembers pushing aside desires, shelving opinions, ignoring discomfort. Again and again, he swallowed his truth. Compromise became a habit, until compromise became disappearance. And here's what no one told him. Authenticity isn't optional in intimacy. A relationship can't breathe if one person fades. She didn't fall in love with a silent man. She fell in love with someone real, someone with opinions, with passions, with limits, with a spine. When he disappeared behind a mask of accommodation, she lost the chance to love the true him. And he lost himself. So he learned, real partnership isn't about becoming small so someone else can feel big. It's about becoming more yourself and inviting the other to do the same, even when inconvenient. Sometimes love requires conflict. Sometimes intimacy demands disruption. The goal isn't to eliminate friction. It's to let friction lead somewhere real. And so, he stopped sacrificing himself for peace, because real peace comes from truth, not from erasure. Lie 4. If you just keep the peace, everything will be fine. He lived this lie for years. He became the emotional manager. His job, minimize drama, smooth over tension, keep everyone comfortable. He convinced himself this was maturity, that avoiding conflict was love, that staying quiet was strength. But peacekeeping isn't peace. It's management. And management breeds resentment. Over time, he avoided the hard conversations. He let things slide. He said, "It's fine," when it wasn't fine. On the surface, everything looked smooth, but underneath, nothing was authentic. Psychologists call this pseudo-intimacy. Everyone gets along on the surface, but nothing real is happening underneath. His wife felt married to a polite stranger. His children learned that real feelings should be hidden. His friends sensed he was performing connection rather than living it. So now, he knows, the relationships that survive conflict are often stronger than those that avoid it. Disagreement doesn't mean rejection. Speaking a hard truth doesn't mean falling out of love. You can say this isn't working for me and still love someone deeply. That's real intimacy. Not the absence of tension, but the transformation of tension into connection. He stopped fearing discomfort. He stopped fearing disagreement. He showed up fully. Not just the easy parts, not just the polished parts, the whole self. And this is where freedom begins. Not in smoothing surfaces, but in standing fully in who you are, in saying what needs to be said, in honoring honesty over performance. And that is what real peace looks like. Lie 5. Success means status and stuff. For years, this was the measure. The big house, the corner office, the shiny car parked in the driveway, the garage full of toys he once dreamed about when he was younger, all lined up, perfect paint, polished chrome. But the truth was that every time he opened that garage door, he felt nothing. No pride, no joy, no peace. Just the heavy silence of objects collected, not fulfillment earned. He remembered buying that first expensive car. The thrill lasted a few days. Then came the emptiness again. Another watch, another suit, another title. But the void stayed. Because success measured by status and things never feeds the soul. It only feeds comparison. And when a man spends his life chasing status, he discovers a hard truth. There will always be a bigger house, a newer car, a higher title, and none of it fills the quiet ache inside. Real success isn't measured by what's in the garage. It's measured by waking up and recognizing the man in the mirror. It's going to bed at night, knowing you lived a day that felt like your own, not a day that was designed to impress others. Lie 6. It's too late to change. This one speaks quietly but dangerously. After 50, it whispers, you're set in your ways. It's too late for new beginnings. You've built this life. Now lie in it. But here's the truth. You're not starting over at 50. You're starting from wisdom. The man who stands here today knows things the man at 30 could never have known. He knows his temperament, his values, his limits. He has seen what empty achievements look like from the inside. He has felt what burnout feels like beneath a polished exterior. And that wisdom, that hard-earned clarity, it is not a barrier, it's a gift. Change now isn't reckless. It's refined, it's deliberate, it's choosing, with eyes wide open, what matters. At 50, 60, 70, change is possible. Not because time rewinds, but because perspective sharpens. Lie 7. Masculinity is a liability. This one crept in slowly. It told him that being a man meant being too much, too assertive, too strong, too confident. So he softened. He deferred. He apologized for taking up space. He held back his opinions. He shrank in rooms where once he stood tall. But then, he noticed something. He wasn't better for it. He wasn't kinder. He wasn't more connected. He was more hesitant, more unsure, more invisible. He didn't become a better man by disconnecting from his masculine core. He just became less himself. The truth is this: integrated masculinity isn't about being loud. It's about being solid. It's about standing your ground, not to overpower, but because you know who you are. It's about protecting, without controlling, leading, without demanding, being present, without performing. True masculinity is quiet strength. It doesn't require noise. It doesn't need applause. It just is. And when a man reaches this place, this integrated place, people feel it. They trust it. And more importantly, he trusts himself again. That trust, that calm, that presence, it can't be bought. It can't be performed. It must be lived. Lie 8. Loneliness is a weakness. He was told that from the start. They warned him. Don't end up alone. Don't sit in silence too long. Don't let the house get too quiet. Because if you're alone, they said, you must be missing something. You must be lacking something. You must be less than whole. But now, he wakes before the sun. The house is still. No voices call from another room. No clatter in the kitchen. No urgent demands or questions waiting. He stands by the window and watches the light shift across the floorboards, soft and slow, and realizes this isn't emptiness. This is space. This is air. This is breathing room. His favorite mug is warm in his hand. His chair is where he left it. His thoughts stretch wide without interruption. What they once called loneliness, he now knows is sanctuary. Anthony Storr said it clearly. Alone time isn't emptiness. It's a creative sanctuary. And that sanctuary has healed him. Here, in this quiet, he finally hears himself think. Finally lets himself feel. Finally honors himself as he is, not as others expected him to be. There's a strength in choosing to sit still. A strength in filling your day with your own pace, your own rhythm, your own permission. Loneliness isn't weakness. It's a sign of mastery. It's proof that he no longer needs noise to feel valid. Proof that his own company is no longer something to escape. This stillness is not an absence. It's presence. His presence, fully, quietly, completely. Lie 9. You must explain your peace. This one ran deep. They always asked why. Why don't you want to move in? Why do you prefer mornings alone? Why don't you call back right away? Why do you keep your weekends empty? As if his peace needed permission. As if every quiet moment required an explanation. But not anymore. He read a simple sentence once, from a man who understood. I never ever want someone to live with me again. I am content wandering around in my home all by myself. That sentence stayed with him. It felt like freedom. And now, when the questions come, he no longer answers. He doesn't defend why he prefers evenings in his chair, reading without conversation, why he lets texts go unanswered until tomorrow, why he walks alone in the park, headphones in, eyes lifted to the trees. His peace doesn't need defense. His preference don't need permission. If someone doesn't understand his quiet, they don't belong in it. If someone sees his stillness and mistakes it for distance, they're not ready for the warmth beneath it. His boundaries no longer come with footnotes. No apologies. No justification. His peace simply is. And that is enough. Lie 10. Silence means you gave up. This was their assumption, that when he stopped arguing, he stopped caring, that when he chose quiet over confrontation, he withdrew. That silence must equal surrender. But they misunderstood. His silence wasn't retreat, it was survival. Because he knows what it's like to waste words on ears that won't listen, to burn energy explaining feelings that someone else refuses to honor, to exhaust himself in conversations that go nowhere. He knows how loud love can get when it's built on tension, how easily passion turns into argument, how quickly debates drain what little peace he worked so hard to build. So now, he chooses silence, not because he has nothing to say, but because not everything deserves a response. Not every comment deserves correction. Not every slight deserves a speech. His silence is no longer emptiness. It's calm. It's control. It's the knowledge that dignity isn't preserved through endless explanation. That peace isn't won by shouting louder. That true power lies in the ability to walk away quietly. Silence is his protection now. It's how he saves his energy. It's how he honors his boundaries. When he sits in silence, it's not because he has given up. It's because he has grown up. Because after years of arguing, years of defending, years of trying to prove his right to feel, to need, to exist, he finally learned that some things are worth preserving more than being understood. His quiet isn't distance. It's wisdom. His silence isn't coldness. It's warmth turned inward. And when he lets the noise pass him by, when he smiles instead of speaks, when he pauses instead of reacts, he isn't withdrawing. He's choosing to keep what matters, choosing to stay whole, choosing peace. Always. Let's keep going. At the end of the day, men over 50 don't stay single because they failed. They stay single because they finally understood what costs too much. Themselves. After decades of working hard, following the rules, providing, sacrificing, performing, they wake up one morning and realize the truth. The real expense was never financial. It was personal. Their time, their sleep, their peace, their dignity. Now, they choose differently. They choose stillness over applause, solitude over conflict, presence over performance. This isn't a rejection of love. It's a recognition of what matters most. No more proving, no more explaining, no more shrinking to fit into someone else's expectations. A man over 50 who chooses to stay single isn't avoiding life. He's finally living it. On his own terms, at his own pace, in a way that feels true. He knows now that peace is priceless, and the only relationships worth having are the ones that allow him to keep that peace intact. So he sits quietly, he breathes deeply, moves deliberately, he smiles, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is finally clear. Which of these lies did you unlearn first? Share your thoughts. You might help another man feel less alone.